you was to say something nasty at the dinner table with your family, and somehow one of your family members decide to report that to the police. Yeah, I'm talking report that to the police. I'm talking like Nazi Germany type shit. You can be prosecuted. You can go to jail. In the last year and a half, year and 3/4, governments, small governments, large governments, policymakers have had unprecedented powers against the people of their countries. And they don't seem to want to let it go, this power. They're enjoying it too much. It seems to be both right and left governments that are actually doing this. If you could call Boris Johnson's government rights of centre or even rights of politics. The likes of Boris Johnson is very much turning into a communist. He believes that he should be able to come to your house, take the boiler out of your house, and then install whatever he wishes to have in your house, probably at your cost. That's due to the so-called climate change, climate heating, I think they call it now, or was it climate freezing? I forget, because I've heard so many different stories and so many falsehoods in reference to that situation. But let's look at in reference to COVID since March of last year. They've realised that they're able to close down society, lock down society by giving these people in the countries fear, propaganda, to make them believe that somehow just by leaving your house you are going to be killing granny or you're going to be killing yourself. Where in fact, if you looked at the statistics, no matter what country you're actually from, that's actually a massive falsehood. It's still true. It was still true then as it is true today. The majority of the people that passed away were in their 80s. A lot of people that passed away that were in their 80s were sent to homes for elderly people that actually had COVID. Hence, more elderly people died. But I can't see the likes of Boris Johnson or the government or even the Labour Party, Parliament today, being held responsible for those deaths. Even though they were the ones that decided to send those elderly people from the hospitals into the elderly homes where people probably did not have COVID at that time, causing the extra deaths. But again, no responsibility. We don't have a media today. This is a major problem. No, the media seems to be attached to whatever government is there at this present moment. Why that is, I don't understand. But we don't have journalism today, or not many journalists today. You can actually call a journalist that will call out the bad behaviour of governments. The problem that we have is that these governments throughout the world, especially the Western world, have enjoyed this power trip. And they're continuing with this. Whether you're looking at the likes of New Zealand or Australia in reference to no jab, no job. I mean, what? I could not have dreamt anything like this could have ever happened no more than about a year and a half ago. I couldn't have dreamt it, and if you could, then hey ho, you know more than me. Would I believe that a British government would be happy locking down people, putting out falsehoods in reference to COVID, having a scientific body putting out falsehoods in reference to COVID, having a certain part of their government literally finding a way of putting out propaganda to the people of the country to scare them so they will take a vaccine? A government that's willing to tell the young people, if you don't have the jab, then you won't be able to live your life. That's a British government today. That I would never have dreamt in a million years that would have happened. But that's where we are today. Let's take Nicola Sturgeon. There's many things that I would love to call her, to be fair. But I'm going to stick with Nicola Sturgeon now, because I don't want to be as nasty as she actually is. I wouldn't trust her as far as I could throw her. And I probably could be able to throw her quite far, because she's not very tall and not very big. However, don't trust the woman. Don't trust any politician, to be fair. But this particular one, she's a piece of work. She's a nasty piece of work. She has basically made it illegal in Scotland for you to say anything nasty about any minority. It could be a disabled person, it could be a Muslim, it could be a guy from Pakistan, it could be an Irish person, it could be any kind of mainly minorities. If you was to say something nasty at the dinner table with your family and somehow one of your family members decide to report that to the police, yeah, I'm talking report that to the police, I'm talking like Nazi Germany type shit, you could be prosecuted. You could go to jail. This woman here done that, has made that law. You wouldn't believe that, would you? Now, just in case there's anyone in England that is worried about this particular law at this present moment, you don't have to worry at this present moment because it's not a part of English law. If it was to come in England, I think there may be a bigger uproar in reference to it. I definitely would be shouting about it. But it's only in Scotland, this law. It literally is authoritarianism. It's something that history should have taught the likes of Nicola Sturgeon how, what's the word I'm looking for? How disastrous a law that actually is. How evil a law that actually is. However, she's enjoying it. She's enjoying the power. And ever since the whole COVID-19 situation, she's enjoyed the power even more. To be able to give it to the people of Scotland and then take it away. This is what people in power generally like. Because it's very easy for people to give away their rights to people like this. But it's very hard for people like this to actually give those rights back to you. And that's why it's taken her so long to actually go away from the restrictions of COVID. Longer than Boris Johnson, would you believe? This woman is a nasty piece of work and should not be in power. Any person that votes for this woman is either an authoritarian themselves or really naive. And I do mean that in the nicest sense. You are naive to vote for this piece of trash. But it's not only the likes of Nicola Sturgeon, it's Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson has decided to take away your rights left, right and centre. He's actually brought in, I think, like psychiatrists to try and scare the public. Experts on bringing out propaganda to scare the public. So you would do what you're told and you would take the vaccines. The likes of Boris Johnson has brought in a rule in September that if you're not jabbed, then you can't go to a nightclub. My personal opinion, he's done that because he just wants to get all the young people to take the jab. Like, you can't live your life unless you take the jab. That's supposed to be a conservative government. They're saying to people, if you don't take the jab, then you don't live your life. This is what's happening right now. In Australia, they've just brought in a law. I don't know if it's the whole of Australia or just Sydney or a couple of cities, I'm not too sure. But I saw a clip where a person of government decided to go on TV and say that if you're walking down the streets and you need to have some water, you are unable to lift up your mask to have some water and then put the mask down again. Now, we all know how hot Australia is, right? If I lived in Australia, I'd be having water with me all the time. So can you just imagine if you've got some sort of illness for one and you need to have a drink and you have to go somewhere to a cafe or something just so you can sit down to have a drink. This is the bullshit that's happening right now in the world. Then you look at the likes of New Zealand, for instance. No job, no jab. No jab, no job. Literally, no jab, no job. They're turning around to employers and say you're not unable to employ a member of staff unless they've had a jab. Can you believe this sort of shit? By the way, this is also happening in Australia. So it's almost like Boris Johnson is the least authoritarian out of the people from other countries, the authoritarians that are mainly on the left-hand side of politics, I must admit. But this is what's happening in the Western world today. And I think that every one of us need to have our eyes open to the shit that's happening.
I will never trust the government.